welcome back to the She Shoots podcast, Women Empowering Women in the Shooting Community, episode 9, Lady Conservationist, Women Protecting Our Ecosystem. My name is Regina Ruiz Ordóñez, and I'm from the Canadian University Shooting Federation. Joining me today, as always, are my co-hosts, Denise Tomlin and Casey Gavinchuk from Lady Guns, and Kelly Melanson from Maple Seed Project, Slamfire Radio, and CCFR Women's Program. I would like to, as always, start by thanking our sponsors, Cabela's Canada Outdoor Fund, positively shaping the future of the outdoors. Every cent donated by rounding up at checkout goes toward helping Canadian organizations just like ours. Savage Arms, home to the Stevens single-shot rifles and shotguns, Beretta, family-owned and operated since 1526, and Vortex, the best in optics. If you have any questions or comments throughout the show, make sure to leave them in the chat box below. Doing so will automatically enter you on the draws for today's giveaway. Today's giveaway will be a CUSF bundle pack. We just have a whole bunch of random CUSF stuff, so we just feel we'll just put it all together and give it away this time. Okay, so that's all for me. So Deneen and Kelly, can you please introduce our guests for today?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Regina, and welcome back, everybody. September, here we are, and we've got such a great show tonight. So Kelly, we've got an amazing guest with us.
We do.
As usual, I get the pleasure of introducing her, and then you're going to kick us off with some great questions. So, Kate, sure. I get the pleasure of talking a little bit about you before we get started. So, for everybody that's listening, Kate MacQuarrie is our guest tonight. She is a professional botanist and trapper, a recreational hunter, angler, and forager. Her day job is Director of Forest, Fish and Wildlife, Environment, Energy, and Climate Action for the province of Prince Edward Island. But she has an active life outside work. Kate hunts upland game and waterfowls, traps beavers, muskrats, and coyotes, does her own skinning and fur handling, forages a ton of wild foods, teaches firearm safety, plant identification and foraging, and works to educate the public about plants and wildlife via her Facebook page. And we're going to tell you how to connect to that later tonight. And when she's got some spare time, she also created Women Shooters of PEI, and that was to provide firearm safety training and live fire events for PEI women. And she also is the field officer for CCFR over there in PEI. So welcome, Kate. We're so excited to have you. And we're so excited to talk to you tonight about all of these things.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks. I'm excited to be here.
Excellent. Well, we're going to toss it over to Kelly because Kel's got all the good questions.
Well, I have some of the good questions. We're going to, Deneen and I are both going to share with that. Kate, just wanted to welcome you and thank you for coming on. You're one of the, I've talked to a lot of people about you and everybody tends to agree you're one of the smartest ladies that we know, especially when it comes to the environment, shooting, hunting, and also actively getting women into shooting, the shooting sports as well. So as I said, I wanted to say thank you for coming on tonight. Let's get into some of these questions that Deneen was talking about. Deneen gave a great background on you, what you do for your job, basically, but also she talked a little bit about the things that you like to do for fun when you're not working. But let's back the bus up a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about your background. Where are you from? Are you from Prince Edward Island, or did you move there? And what brought you into this path, basically, the shooting sports?
Yeah, I'm born and raised on PEI. Grew up in Charlottetown. My family goes back to 1769 here, so we've got deep roots in the province.
Yeah.
But I am not your characteristic firearms owner, user, hunter. I grew up in an urban family in downtown Charlottetown. Nobody in my family was involved with conservation, wildlife, hunting at all. And I never touched a firearm until I was in university in my 20s. And fell in love with it from there. So I think an urban female that doesn't get involved in shooting quite young is probably not all that common. And I think that probably stokes my passion for bringing others of similar background into the sports.
So it sounds like it's a perfect marriage between our program and the Canadian University Shooting Federation and you, and how you got started. So how did you actually, as a young female, pick up that firearm? What happened?
Yeah, so it really came through my studies at university, where
Okay.
I got into biology and started learning about conservation biology and my wildlife biology course. And we talked about the role that hunting plays in conservation. And I thought, well, all right, let's give it a shot. So I did. I was fortunate to have some mentors that were willing to take me out and try it. And, right from the get-go, I thought this is something that I really want to do for a long time to come.
Okay. What types of courses did you go to university at UPEI, or did you? What type of courses did you have to take to get into your career path that you're currently doing?
Yeah, I did. I did 2 degrees at UPEI. So I have a
Okay.
Bachelor of Science in Biology. And then when UPEI introduced their graduate program, I enrolled. So I have a Master of Science in Plant Science as well. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm a hunting botanist. I think that's a pretty small subset as well. So we studied everything from genetics and
Okay.
chemistry and physics and all of those sorts of things. But it was really the botany and the wildlife biology and the conservation were what really stoked my passion.
Yeah, I can see that in some of the posts that you make on Facebook as well, which we're going to get into a little bit later. But as somebody who grew up in an urban community, Charlottetown, and somebody who wasn't familiar with firearms, and also how is botanist the ratio for male to female? Is the ratio more male to female, or is it the other way around?
They're in the area that I'm in,
Yeah.
probably more male to female. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about some of those obstacles and challenges that you found being a female, somebody from an urban community, as well as somebody who is just trying to overcome some of those challenges that you see in getting into your career path.
Yeah, in the career path, I'd say there were 3 main obstacles, certainly
Okay.
urban, female, and young. So
Yeah.
I came to my role as director of forest, fish, and wildlife when I was sort of mid-30s. Everybody that worked with me, for the most part, was 50s or above. I very quickly got used to being the youngest one at the table and the only
Yeah.
female at the table. I shouldn't say got used to, I never got used to it. I became accustomed to sometimes being dismissed or not taken too seriously.
Okay.
And it was really just a matter of proving yourself. There's the old saying, and not to be too biased, I guess, but sometimes a woman needs to be twice as good to be considered half as good as a guy.
Yeah.
Early in my career, I saw that, but kind of after having some successes and proving myself, I think that disappeared. And, I was certainly lucky to be welcomed into the many rooms that I was.
Okay. So what about what are some other positions that you've held? You've held other positions within your industry prior to the one that you currently have. So do you want to tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah, I'd say the 2 biggest ones is I was executive director of our provincial land trust called Island Nature Trust for about
Mm-hmm.
8 years. And that was a job that I really enjoyed and really making a lasting and meaningful contribution to conservation in the province.
Mm-hmm.
I was also director of the PEI Wildlife Federation for quite some time, and in fact was their first woman president as well back in the 1990s. So,
I saw that.
that was they are, I shouldn't say were, they still are a fantastic group dedicated to conservation and doing some great work on the ground. So again, all of these things kind of shaped my experience, kind of helped me develop into the role that I have now.
So it's perfect way to get into what you're doing now. Conservation. Let's talk about that a little bit because
I would love to. Yeah.
Let's
Congratulations,
yeah.
Kate. Congratulations on all those roles and then setting the bar so high for women to follow and for people just to do good work. So I'm sorry, Kelly, I cut you off. I'm excited to talk about conservation. So let's create that baseline, Kate. Let's talk about conservation. What is it and what does it include?
Yeah, and I mean, that's a huge question, right? And for me, I'm kind of a simple person, so I bring things down fairly simply. And for me, conservation really is what Aldo Leopold said in terms of keeping every cog and wheel, right? So it's a matter of keeping all of the species that we have, plants, animals, fungi, bacteria, everything, ensuring that we have them where they're supposed to be in the numbers and health that they're supposed to be, and that we have habitat for them. So really, that's what it boils down to for me is, as Leopold said, to keep every cog and wheel.
So if the importance is to keep all of that working like a cog and wheel, what are those threats that you're seeing out there against that balance?
Yeah, now here on the East Coast, there's really 2. One's probably more local, but one I think is global. The one that's global is the lack of connection between people and the environment. Our population is becoming more and more urbanized. People have lost connection with where their food comes from, with all of the goods and services that the environment provides, and the fact that we wouldn't be here without them. So really, the education and the lack of connection is, I think, a really big threat. And certainly on our coast, and I don't know about elsewhere in Canada, but development and urbanization. Here on Prince Edward Island, we are the most densely populated province in Canada. Our population is growing continually. We're seeing urban sprawl, we're seeing subdivisions, we're seeing a lot of other development that permanently takes habitat out of use. So that's definitely a threat, and trying to find the balance between economic development and conservation, and recognizing that we can't have one at the expense of the other.
Right, and everything seems to be a priority one of these days when it comes to most of those. So, yeah. So if we segue then between the balance of conservation and economic development and flora and fauna and habitat, what's the relationship between that conservation and the hunting community? And how do we work together to build on what conservation is and should be?
I love that question, because there's such a direct link between conservation and hunting, both historically and today. What I tell people that may not understand hunting or may be opposed to it is the very fact that we have the conservation laws that we do today, and the protected areas and the national parks, that all has its roots in hunters lobbying for those things. So we wouldn't have those without the hunting community historically. Hunters as a group are the largest contributors to conservation, both directly in license fees and conservation funds, but also through contributions. I was at the Delta Waterfowl fundraising dinner a couple of weeks ago, and it's just great to see everybody coming together to support those causes. I think a couple of other things that often the public misses is the important roles that hunters and trappers and anglers play, both in being the eyes and ears in the field. So kind of an early warning system. If something is going wrong with our habitats and our populations, these are the first people to see that. And lastly, is the important service they play in controlling populations. And, I often think, and I'll pull an example from kind of my trapping background as well, but the jurisdictions that have prohibited recreational trapping, that doesn't mean they've gotten rid of trapping altogether. It just means that now the taxpayers pay for it, because the service still needs to be there. And hunters play that same role. So, we have an early goose, or we call it the early goose season, but we've got a resident Canada goose season in PEI now to help prevent resident geese from overpopulating and being problems that we've seen elsewhere. So, that's an important role that hunters are not only voluntarily providing, they're paying for the privilege of providing that service. Yeah, so it's a huge and very direct benefit.
I think that's such a great point to illustrate, Kate, and thank you for sharing it, that hunters are doing it voluntarily and we're paying to do it. And either way it gets done, whether it's under contract to the government for controlling populations, or whether it's done by those of us who are hunting and harvesting. So I think that's a great point to illustrate. So lastly, on this thought stream, how do we include sport shooters that maybe aren't hunters? How do they play a role in conservation and that relationship?
Yeah, well, they're certainly a really important part of the shooting community for a bunch of different reasons. Is I think, and especially with what we're seeing right now, we all need to be united. Sport shooters and hunters, it's not a we and they, and it's not a, I sometimes hear derogatory language from one group to the other, and that's not the case at all. We're all on the same team. And really, it's, from my point of view, it's the sport shooters that help keep the hunters in business. The amount that I shoot on while I'm hunting is not going to keep my local gun store in business. The amount that I and my friends and others may shoot when they're at the range will do that. So without the sport shooting community, I think the hunting community will be diminished, and it's really important that we work together.
Another excellent point. We're an ecosystem, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great way to put it.
Good.
Yeah, we're supporting each other. I wanted to ask you specifically about the hunting piece of it. I know that Prince Edward Island has some native species, and I wanted to ask you about that because being from the East Coast, I do know that there's some species that aren't available to hunt on Prince Edward Island. For example, there's no deer, or are there deer now?
Nope. We have no deer. The bear behind me came from Nova Scotia, not local. Yeah. So we have no big game. Big game on PEI, coyote would be the largest animal that we have to hunt.
Okay. What are some of the other species that are native to Prince Edward Island that people are able to hunt?
Yeah, so waterfowl's a big one. I mean, we have
Okay.
world-class goose and duck hunting here, and that's kind of the number one, the bread and butter for our hunting community. And I certainly enjoy waterfowl hunting, but I'm very partial to upland game. So grouse, ruffed grouse is certainly my favorite. We have Hungarian partridge, snipe and woodcock. I'm going to be honest, those are out of my league, but if you're shooting in that league, we've got those as well. And predator shooting hunting is becoming more popular here now as well, and particularly coyotes. So it's great to see.
Okay. Yeah. Coyotes specifically, I know that there's a lot of farmland on Prince Edward Island and people with cows as well as other types of livestock as well. I know that coyotes are becoming quite a problem in some areas as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a concern. I wouldn't say problem. I never like to describe wildlife as a problem, but it's certainly a concern in some areas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Let's talk about all those things that you've been posting on Facebook. I love your updates every once in a while.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah. So you do go out and do regular nature walks, flora and fauna walks with people and do information sessions. Can you tell people about these? How often do you go? Where can you register for these?
Yeah, sure. So I've been doing something that the Facebook side of it, the education side, I've been doing for a couple of years. And this year I started doing some live sessions and getting people out. And what really underscores, or the reason why I do this, is really, it's addressing that disconnect between people and the environment. So, one of the statistics that I'm sure you've heard is that most people can recognize more corporate logos than they can plants and animals that live around them. And I'm on a mission to change that. Gosh darn it, I'm going to change that. So that's really is getting information out there and getting people to think, hey, there's a plant that I've never seen before. Kate posted about it. Let's learn more about it. Or come out to my foraging workshops and learn how to identify plants, learn the tremendous amount of edible stuff that's all around us. And really, especially since COVID, people are more and more interested in knowing what they can collect from the wild. And I'm very passionate about getting people to do that. Again, it strengthens the connection. And the more you understand something, the more you value it and the more you want to conserve it is the way I look at it.
Yeah. Such a good point. Such a good point. What about the bad stuff, the invasive species?
Yeah, invasive species. We certainly have those. And, as an island, we are more vulnerable to invasive species than the mainland. Of course, we also have more opportunity to keep them out because we only have a few points of entry. We certainly have invasives here that are of concern. I'm really pleased. We have PEI Invasive Species Council has been doing some great work in education, but also in eradication. So, for example, we found some populations of giant hogweed, which can cause some problems, and they worked really hard with some watershed groups to get rid of that. Yeah. On the prevention side, of course, prevention and early detection are the two keys that we try to work with. And on the prevention side, with the Invasive Species Council, we've launched a Don't Move Firewood campaign, encouraging visitors to the island. If they've brought firewood with them, we have bins at the secure bins at the 2 points of entry at the bridge and the ferry, which with signage. So if you've brought firewood to the island, leave it there because it could have pests like emerald ash borer, for instance, that we don't have here and we don't want. So absolutely a concern, working on prevention and early detection, and a huge shout out to the PEI Invasive Species Council for the great work that they're doing.
Awesome.
Thanks for that. So if we're going to do good things like drop off firewood and learn about the flora and the fauna, I would say that's part and parcel of becoming a good land steward. So how can we work towards becoming better land stewards, Kate? And what are some of your tips for protecting the environment and continuing this path to sustainability?
Yeah, that's a huge question. And of course, depends on whether you're a landowner or a land user. And we're all one of those two things, right? And, if you're a landowner, going as far as setting aside your land as a protected area, but certainly working to eradicate invasive species, planting native species, getting out and learning what you have and how you can use them and how you can share them and what wildlife you have are all great things to do. But even if you're just a land user and not an owner, learning about what's there, sharing that knowledge, encouraging people to to treat the land as a community that we're part of, rather than as a commodity that's there for us to use. And again, that's Aldo Leopold, who's certainly one of my heroes. But making those connections, I think, is the key, because we won't conserve what we don't understand. We won't care about it.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about women and your interest in getting women to the shooting sports. But before we do that, let's talk about what recommendations do you have for women who are interested in the field that you're getting into? How can they start that path?
Yeah. Find a group and get involved. So here on PEI, we've got 25 community-based watershed groups, and they're great avenues to getting involved. Groups like, Delta Waterfowl, the Wildlife Federation, Ducks Unlimited are all great opportunities. And I guess what I'd say is don't be intimidated. I'm a total introvert. I do not like walking into a crowd of a room that I don't know who the people are. But in all of these organizations, the people are welcoming, they're friendly. You're not going to be turned away or scorned or, put down because you're a woman. You're going to be welcomed and brought into the fold. So, find a group that's in your area, make connections, and get involved.
Excellent. Speaking of walking into a room, well, way back on June 21st, 2019, C71 received royal assent. You were somebody that was asked to testify before the Senate on C71. Are you able to give us a little bit of information on that experience? Why were you called to testify specifically, and what type of input did you give?
Yeah, so I think the reason I was called to testify specifically is because of Women Shooters of PEI, because there aren't a lot of women firearms groups in Canada. And really, again, fighting that introvert urge to say, no, I don't want to do this. I realized that women's voices are not being heard in the discussions around firearms law and gun control. It's as simple as that. The public sees firearms as a male issue and women as somehow the victims, which is total BS. The policymakers aren't taking women's points of view or even recognizing that we're part of the shooting community. So I really felt that I had to be there to try to drive those points home and to say, hey, look, they talk about looking at things through various lenses, and you're not looking at firearms law through women's rights lenses, and we need to do that.
Yeah. And if anybody has an opportunity to go read through the testimony, take a couple hours and go through it, because the information that you gave and the feedback that you gave was excellent. Did you feel like you were heard when you gave that testimony at all?
I'd say heard as much as I expected to be. So, I was there as much for kind of the public and others that might be listening as I was for the folks at the table. I think those at the table, their minds were made up when I sat down, and it was very much split along partisan lines. But again, I still think it was important to get that information out, and I don't feel that it was time wasted at all.
Okay, so you don't feel like you missed any opportunities within the process, or that you did not get your voice heard?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think the outcome was pretty much foregone, but the opportunity to have that at a national platform, I think, was worth the time spent.
Yeah, and I do too. Based on the information that you gave and the testimony that I read, I felt it was, as I said, you were very well spoken, and you represented. Not only did you represent women in shooting, but you represented all shooters, so Canadian shooters as well. So thank you for that. Yes. Janine, do you want to talk to Kate about the Women Shooters of PEI?
I would love to. I would love to, and I'd love to also echo Kelly's comments. Kate, thank you so much for taking the time and the opportunity to represent the women in the firearms community and the voice of women, because we also say that often when we're doing our events with Lady Guns, that our face and our voice and our opinion isn't considered when it comes to what's going on with firearms rights. And so thank you for that. So yeah. So yeah. Oh,
I just wanted to interject. I think that's why we're doing She Shoots as well, and that's why Lady Guns is so prevalent, and women of the CCFR. I can't even talk anymore.
All the C's, yeah.
But I think, Kate, you started that process as well, specifically here in Canada. Without that, all the women that are joining our shooting sports are following in your footsteps. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you.
All right. So speaking of all the women, let's talk about the Women Shooters of PEI. Yeah. Who are they? Who are you? When did it start? Why did it start? Let's go down that rabbit hole for a while.
Okay, no, that sounds good. So we started Women Shooters of PEI, I think it was around 2014. I've been teaching firearm safety since the early 1990s, and fairly early on, I realized that men and women learn differently. And I do a lot of adult education, and that's not biased. It's not. It's science. Men and women learn differently. And what I found is that the women wanted their own firearm safety courses. So fairly early on, I started doing that. But then there was the question of what next. So here I am. I'm a woman. I've got my firearms license. How do I shoot? What do I buy? Who do I ask for advice? So myself and a couple of others started the Women Shooters group with a view to providing firearm safety training specifically for women, but also live fire events. So we go out to the range. We partner with some of the ranges here. We do handgun days, rifle days. We've got a skeet shoot coming up later this month. We also partner with some of our watershed groups and do mentored hunts. We've got women that would love to go out hunting, but don't have anyone to take them. So get them out for that as well. And it's been really fantastic. I mean, the first year I was a little discouraged. We had maybe a dozen women participate. The last year before COVID, we had 150 women through our program, through the courses and various events. And you know what I love to see? I love the new women coming in, but the repeat customers are pretty exciting too, because, they're always saying, I had such a great time at the skeet shoot. When's your next one? And it's really overwhelming, the interest and the passion and the fun. And it's just absolutely fun to get folks out. There's a lot of laughter. We've never had anybody that came out to an event and said, well, I'm never doing that again. It's always, when's your next one? How soon can we get out? So it's really fun to do.
And in doing it as long as you have, are you finding moms are bringing their daughters and sisters and grandmas and the whole family's coming out too?
Absolutely. That was one of my favorite ones is we had a woman come out and she brought her mother. Her mother, neither one of them had ever handled firearms. Her mom was a little bit nervous, a tiny little woman. I don't know how old she was, a small gray-haired woman. Of course, so am I. So there you go. But, I was a little bit worried. How is she going to get along? But she was fantastic. She was smashing plays, within half an hour of being on site. What really excites me is I've had a number of women both in the courses and out to the live fire events that are there specifically to overcome their fear. And, I really have to give a shout out because that's a really courageous thing to do. So it really impresses me that they're willing to do it. And it really impresses me how much fun they have and just the change in demeanor from a lot of anxiety at the get-go to a lot of joy by the time they leave.
100%. We experience that as well. So I'm glad that it is consistent across the country. That's amazing. Excellent. Yeah. So break down a little bit. You touched on events and you touched on hunting and you touched on shooting. Do you have a mentor program? Do you have a recruiting? Is it a membership? How does this group or organization come together and keep growing?
Yeah, so we're not membership based, right now at least. So there's kind of a core of us. I want to give a huge shout out to Dale Cameron in Prince County PEI. Dale's a huge help with us, as is Delta Waterfowl PEI chapter. They work with us as well. So we run the courses. We partner with the watershed groups and with Delta to do mentored hunts, and just try to address the needs of the women, what they're asking for. So it might be a woman that wants somebody to go to the gun store with them and have a conversation about what's the best gun for her. I've got a woman just recently, she's got a new scope for a gun and she wants to know how to, I don't really know how to fix it on and zero it in. Great. You know what? We'll find somebody that can help you with that. So it's a matter of doing those one-on-one connections. And PEI is so small that, we have volunteers and folks really from tip to tip that are willing to help out and that are keen. So, just tell me where you live and what you need, and we'll try to find somebody that can help you out with that.
Yeah. PEI is really small. So the last time I was on Prince Edward Island, I met some of the people or some of the ladies that have attended your events, and they just sang your praises. And they thought the program that you run was fantastic. And the people that you have come out are this exact, as Janine said, exact same people or women that are coming out to our events as well. So thank you again for doing that. So,
and you guys for what you do too, right? We're all in this together.
Yeah, we are. So you were talking about Delta Waterfowl. I know that in the past we kind of had a little bit of a conversation of this before we came on, if we really wanted to talk about it. But I think it is important to talk about it. Previously, with Delta Waterfowl, their dinners, you don't supply any of the game for those dinners, correct?
No, it was the PEI
Yeah.
Wildlife Federation used to have an annual game dinner, and I used to love that.
Yeah.
But the rules around sale and use of game in fundraising dinners, and as well as around handling meat that's not inspected at a certified facility, have
Yeah.
all changed so much that unfortunately those dinners just aren't possible anymore.
Okay. So it's meat that's inspected at the at these events. I know that in other provinces there are other rules. Deneen, there's something different there's like you were talking about a veteran organization. So do you want to talk a little bit about that? So if you want to talk about a little bit about that, yeah. Anyways, just
yeah, I'll jump in.
Yeah.
It was last hunting season. I was made aware of an opportunity to provide venison to the Veterans Food Bank here in Alberta. So, assuming that rule has stayed consistent, I understand that that we as hunters can harvest venison and donate in wholes or halves to assigned butcher shops, and the processing is taken care of as well, and then it's put into the larder for the Veterans Food Bank. So if that still exists, I'd like to know. So if anybody that's listening wants to let us know, at least in Alberta, and I would love to put a group of women together that would like to take a hunt and put a few hefty deer in the freezer for the Veterans Food Bank. So
Okay.
I'm hoping that still is continuing.
So our recommendation is to check with your specific province if you're able to do that or not. But going back to Kate, with that, are you seeing that there's an increase in women that are wanting to go out and hunt for their own sustenance?
Good question.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's some of the women that come to our organization, they think that all we do is hunt, and they may not be interested in that. They're more interested in target shooting, and that's cool. Whatever you're interested in, we're willing to work with you. But we do have more and more women that want to get out hunting, want to give it a try, and really are looking for somebody experienced to go with. So they might have taken the firearm safety and the hunter safety course. They've got all their licenses, but don't know where to go or how to set up or how to set decoys or do all of these things that we need to do. So it's amazing to get them out. And again, we try to set it up. Of course, there's never any guarantees when you're hunting, but we try to set it up so that they have success. And it's really exciting to see a woman shoot her first duck. That's really exciting to see.
That's exciting. It is.
That's why we call it hunting, not shooting. Shooting, you're always guaranteed to hit paper or steel or a target at some point. So, so I'm curious on the why, Kate. Why are women going out and hunting more than ever before? Why are they telling you that they want to find a mentor and bring some food into their game bag?
I see it as two things. The first one, and I think the biggest driver, is kind of that food security end of things. So, I mean, it's no secret that inflation is crazy these days. Food prices are high. You may have a family to feed. There's a growing interest in sort of healthy, organic, free-range food, and that's hunting to a T, right? So it kind of checks those boxes that I think a lot of the sector segment is interested in. And it's also the novelty and just trying something new. It's like, hey, I haven't tried this before. Maybe I'll like it. Let's give it a shot. No pun intended. So it's I think it's those two things that drive it.
Well, and if we're reducing or removing the barriers that women can do this too, and all they have to do is get out and give it a try, and that there's a bunch of us that are willing to help them, I think that will bring more and more women. And although we have increased inflation, we unfortunately have the cost of increased ammunition. So everybody's better get out and target shoot a little bit before they go out and try and harvest something. So
true enough.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are more recommendations that you might come up with, Kate, for getting women out and getting them involved? We've talked about the different associations. We've talked about sport shooting. We've talked about groups like your women's group. What are other ways that women can get out into hunting and foraging and shooting and just really connecting with nature and the conservation side so that they can appreciate and understand this whole ecosystem?
Yeah, and the nice thing about all of these things is the first step. I mean, you can spend as much or as little on these things as you want, right? So really the first step is just getting out, exploring the world that's around you. Here on PEI, we've got about 90% privately owned land. So it's not a matter of just walking out and exploring anywhere. But, finding out we've got the Crown Land Atlas online, finding out where some government land is, going out and walking trails, listening, being quiet in nature. So going out and, not necessarily taking your 6 best gal friends with you and chatting the whole time. There's time and place for that. But going out and just spending some quiet time alone if you can, and observing and listening and learning and smelling and using all your senses. And then kind of building on that learning as you go. It's always helpful to find a mentor, but it's not always essential. There's a lot of online resources, there's print resources that can help you kind of get into these things. And once you get your foot in the door, then there's a whole world that's going to be open to you. And you can go down the rabbit hole as far as you want, and in as many different directions as you want.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. So Kate, remind us once again, if people want to follow you on Facebook and all of those great tips and tricks and great photos, where can we find you?
You can find me on Facebook at just Kate MacQuarrie. I post on PEI plants, edible and medicinal plants and habitats in the summer. And then I switch over to winter wildlife sign in the fall and winter. So if you're interested in PEI natural history, that's the place to go.
Okay.
Outstanding. So we're just into hunting season. So Kate, what's coming up for you, and what are you going to take in the field to take care of?
Yeah, so I love grouse hunting for sure. I'm hoping to line up a goose hunt. I haven't been goose hunting in a couple of years, so folks that may be watching know who they are. I'm going to be giving you a call. But grouse for sure. And it's funny, the waterfowl season is open, and some of my friends are out, and I think it's fantastic to go out on the 1st of September. The temperature here has been like mid-20s to even high 20s today, and I find it really hard to get motivated to hunt when it's that warm. But as soon as it starts getting cooler, I'll be out. And I know some of my friends know that even on the coldest days, I'll be the stillest one in the blind as we're waiting for birds to come in. So
outstanding. And we talked about this before we went live. What is your firearm of choice for those pursuits?
Yeah, so now I'm going to reveal myself as a real old-fashioned person, but my firearm of choice, I've got a Stevens side-by-side 16 gauge, and for upland, that is the first firearm I ever hunted with 35 years ago now, probably, and it is still my absolute favorite. It's kind of like an extension of me. So that's my pal. I love all firearms, but that one has a special place in my heart.
That's outstanding. Awesome. I love side-by-sides. They're definitely a classic for sure. And I have yet to put one in my gun case, so I should probably get on that. So
I think there must be room for it.
Right? I'm sure there is. If not, I'll just get a new gun case.
Exactly.
If people are interested in connecting with the Women of Shooters of Prince Edward Island as well, where can they go to get that information?
Yep. So everything that we do, we post on our Women Shooters Facebook page. So Women Shooters of PEI. We've got a skeet shoot. It's sold out right now, but we've got a skeet shoot coming up. I believe it's on the 24th of September. We're working on a range day at the local rifle club, and I'll be advertising some mentored hunts later on this week as well. So awesome. All of our events are posted there, and come October, we'll probably get back into doing some more courses again. So if you're on the island and interested, please follow our page, and that's where our events are.
Excellent. Thank you, Kate, for coming on tonight again. We really appreciate it, but also we appreciate you for all that you've done for our community and women in our community as well. So we want to invite you to hang on, because we're going to get into some questions for the audience. I know that Casey has been tagging those, so just hang around for a few minutes. We'll do a little bit of Q&A, see if there's any questions that the audience or watching audience have asked.
So we do have a couple questions. The first one is from Doobie Weiler, and it was to Kate. Would you say humans need to be part of all the processes, hunting and trapping, etc.?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to get people involved in all of those activities, hunting, fishing, and trapping. And for all of the reasons that I talked about with hunting specifically is, the connection to the environment, understanding more about what's around you, the service that it plays in wildlife management, the funding that it gives for wildlife management and conservation, and also the important services it provides. So really, I can't say enough about those activities, and would love to see people engaged.
Awesome. All right. And then our next question is from 1AB, and he's asking how the wild pig situation is out in your area.
It's excellent. We don't have any, so that works for me.
Not a native species.
I think I know Alberta's got it's getting worse right now. So.
In parts of Canada, yeah, for sure. One of the advantages of being an island, and we talked about invasive species, so I think we should be pretty well able to stop wild pigs at the border, but fingers crossed.
We can only hope. All right, so another question from DB Weiler is, do you trap on your own or do you have help?
Great question. So I do trap on my own right now, but I'm really grateful. I never would have gotten into it without having a mentor to get me started. And again, that's similar to what we talked about in hunting. I started flying solo a couple of years ago, so to speak, and don't just trap, but also do my own fur handling, which I think is really important as well. So I do the skinning, fleshing, and I send my furs, rather than send most of them to auction, I get them tanned in New Brunswick, and then I just sell them as tanned furs. I like to be able to control my own price rather than see what I get at auction.
Yeah. What furs do you, which species do you trap? And yeah.
So beaver and muskrat primarily, and so most of the work that I do is nuisance work for folks. Beaver and muskrat, and also coyote. And most of the coyote trapping is on my own property. And it's, again, an example of sustainability. I've been trapping coyotes on this land for 5 or 6 years, and I have no fewer coyotes today than I did then by design. If I wanted fewer, I'd put more pressure on them. But I can take animals every year, use the fur for very high-end, high-value products, and not harm the population at all.
Perfect.
Such a good point.
I'm skipping a little bit ahead because I think Doobie had another question kind of as an add-on regarding trapping, but do you need some facility to store your furs?
No, I just store them in my house, store them in the basement, out of reach of the dogs. I had one very unfortunate dog-related beaver fur incident, but anyway, no, in my basement, out of reach from the dogs, no special facility.
All right. And he's wondering how to pin down a lynx to release and keep a gun on it, and what the physical challenges as a woman are for trapping.
So we don't have any wildcats on PEI, so lynx isn't something that I have any personal experience with, but doing that would be practice with a catch pole, which is definitely something that takes some practice. So that doesn't specifically answer that first question, but I don't have any firsthand experience with that. The physical challenges of the women in trapping really is just the equipment and carrying it, and it's a matter of finding adapting ways to do things. So, if you're a big, strong guy, you can probably carry a couple of 50 or 60 pound beavers out at a time. I can carry one, and I have a way that I fasten it on my back so that it's all the weight is on my back, and it makes it easier that way. So really, I think the only physical challenges are some of the heavy weights that are associated with it. The distances aren't a big deal, and the skinning itself. And I'm sure there's going to be some male fur handlers that don't like this, but all of the best fur handlers I know are women. So I really think that women are better at fur handling than men.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's attention to detail. I really do, and it's just taking the time and not rushing.
So I have an add-on question, Kate, with you being an upland hunter, running dogs and being a dog lover and being a trapper. I took a course with a trapping group in Alberta specifically because we run dogs when we upland hunt. And so being knowledgeable in both, what are like 2 or 3 great recommendations about running dogs in an area where there might be trap lines or some kind of device that might get our dog entangled?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I'm really glad that you asked that. So if you're not familiar with how traps work, there's lots of videos online to take a look at how to release dogs from them. So the types of traps that we use here typically are modified footholds, and for beavers, they're called conibear traps. There are ways, what I always do is I carry a pair of pliers with me. So if my dog happens to get into a snare, I personally don't snare, but for those that do, that you can cut your dog out. And I also carry a rope. The rope is what you can use to release an animal from the conibear trap. I can't describe how to do that here. You'll need to see a video. So carry those tools with you. Know how to release an animal from a trap. Time is of the essence. So you want to have your animal under control and know where they are. Here on Prince Edward Island, you need permission if you're trapping on private land. And your dog shouldn't be at large. So ideally here on PEI, we shouldn't have conflicts between dogs and trappers. We do. And normally, and I know the dog lovers are probably going to not like this, but it's usually the dog handler's fault because the trapper legally must have permission to be there, and the dog, of course, doesn't know where the property boundaries are. So,
right. And does there have to be signage, Kate, if you've got trapping in the area? Does there have to be signage to notify a dog owner?
No, on PEI we
Okay.
don't require signage, but we have set some public land areas aside that are off limits to trapping. So and we have those posted on the government website. So if you're, particularly once trapping season opens in the middle of October, either stick to the no trapping areas. Be sure that you have private landowner permission and know that there aren't traps there. Always a good idea to carry pliers and a rope with you just in case the worst happens.
Thanks for letting me pull that follow-on question in. So, Casey, I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No worries. It's all the information everybody wants to know and
right.
know to ask. So Julie wanted to know, what do you say to a skeptic against hunting for conservation? Do you have an elevator pitch?
Yeah, the elevator pitch is always hard, and I'm not good at that, as those that have been with me for the last 45 minutes now know. Really, my typical opening line or short version is, if you've enjoyed a park, a national park, a protected area, or wildlife legislation, thank a hunter, is really what it boils down to, because our conservation legislation, our protected areas all have their roots in hunting. So it's kind of the, on PEI, we've got bumper stickers that say "Eaten lately, thank a farmer." I'm sure you have that in the prairies as well. If you've enjoyed the outdoors and a conservation area, thank a hunter, because that's the cause.
Well, thank you. All right, and the last question I have is from Doobie, and would you like to be able to have a handgun instead of being restricted to a rifle while trapping?
Absolutely. And I see that as an issue of safety. So we can't carry handguns trapping on Prince Edward Island. So I have a .22 rifle that I take with me. I'm very safe with a rifle, but it's going to be a lot easier if I were to have a sidearm rather than to have to take a long gun with me. 100%.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a shared
anywhere.
Yeah, I think that's a shared thought and a common thought amongst other people in other provinces. So.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right, and I think that's it for the questions from our audience. So I will hand it over to Regina. And thank you, Kate, so much for coming on and talking with us. It's been such a pleasure.
I was going to say, I'm honored to be with you guys. You guys are my heroes, and I'm really happy to be here. So thank you.
Thank you so much. So Casey, it's actually both you and I, because we're giving out a prize right now.
Right, I forgot. Well, give me a second, because now I have to count the comments.
So talk amongst yourselves.
So while she's counting comments, I just have to say, Kate also is a dog lover, and she regularly posts pictures of her dogs. And so, yeah. I think that, Deneen, I wanted to thank you for that question. I think it's something that we've talked about previously as well.
Yeah.
And as dog lovers ourselves, speaking of which, mine's barking. I know that a lot of people will be interested in that as well. So thank you.
Well, and it doesn't just apply to people who upland hunt, because we who like to get in the great outdoors and like to take our dogs with us, like to let them cruise around and explore. And so, as much as they're going to experience skunks, porcupines, and noxious weeds, they're also going to maybe come across somebody's trap line. And so I just thought it was really important. And it was brought to my attention as well. And I was educated. So I always like to share that, because there would be nothing more distressing than not being able to rescue your dog.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right, so I've got it all worked out now.
Did we give you enough time?
Good, because that's a much happier note than what I ended on. So let's give away some stuff, Casey.
All right. Well, I think we said that we were going to do the CCFR bundle, and then I figure we're probably going to give away a She Shoots t-shirt.
We are.
So that's 2. So the first winner is 1AB for the CCFR bundle.
Congratulations. And how does 1AB get their prize?
So 1AB, because you're on YouTube, I can't contact you through that platform. And I will need you to contact me at casey@ladyguns.ca, and I can get your t-shirt size and your address, and we can send that out to you.
Yeah, sounds great. And how about for She Shoots t-shirt? Who's our winner for that one?
All right. So our She Shoots t-shirt is Doobie Wilder.
Ooh, congratulations. You get
So
to rep our podcast now.
yeah, and that's the same thing for Doobie. We're on YouTube, so just shoot me an email at casey@ladyguns.ca, and we can get all the information and send that out to you.
Awesome.
And once you get those shirts, winners, post yourself on your social media and tag us at CUSIF and CUSIF Women's and Project Maple Seed and Lady Guns, and let us know that you have those great shirts and wear them with pride. And we thank you for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We love to see it, and we'll like to share them as well. So moving on from the prizes, let's get on to upcoming events. So for CSF, registration has opened up for the National Trap and Skeet Tournament that's going on. So you can go check out the CUSF.ca website so you can check out all the rules for it, and you must also be a member to participate. So if you want to be a member, you can just go through the website and become a member through there as well. And that's it for me. But I know there's a lot of Maple Seed stuff happening with CUSF as well. So I'll let Kelly tell us about that.
You're absolutely right. There's lots of stuff that's happening with CUSF with Project Maple Seed. We have a couple of events that are happening here in Ontario as well as Alberta, I believe. The ones that are here in Ontario are going to be happening in London, Ontario, as well as Ottawa. Now, I think that we've sold some of the spots for that, but I believe there's also some that are still available for specifically Ottawa. Not sure about London. If it's not a CUSIF event, we also have other events that are going to be happening. Lots of stuff on our calendar. Go to mapleseedrifleman.ca, go to the event section, scroll down, and if it's sold out, it'll stay sold out. But if there's still seats available at other events and it's within driving distance, my recommendation is to get in there. So yeah, what about Lady Guns?
Lady Guns. So took a little bit of a pause over the summer, but now we're working on dates with the Shooting Edge, Calgary Shooting Center, and Red Deer Shooting Center to put our ladies' nights back in the ranges, so all you women can get out and try some pistols and some rifles and have a bunch of fun. As of yesterday, I had a great conversation with Okanagan Precision Shooters out of Kelowna, and they would like to have a Lady Guns event there. So fingers crossed, we're going to put something together, and Casey and I will make our way to Kelowna and do something between now and October-ish. That's as close as we can get for dates right now. So we'd like to thank Okanagan Precision Shooters for giving the shout out. We'd love to do something with you. So other than that, love to share the Alberta Hunter Education, AHIA ladies program. Their fall program is running on Wednesday nights for trap shooting and skeet. We also have some mentored hunting kicking off. So get a hold of AHIA and see if you can get on the lists for some mentored hunting. Not only can you go out and shoot some deer if that's what you want to do, but there's some pheasants hunts going on as well. And so Pheasants Forever and Ducks Unlimited both have some things going on. And I think that some of the university clubs that are members of CUSIF are pretty active in that. So check it out. I know they're looking. There are spots still available. If you're really trying to find out how to get out and what to do and meet some amazing people that you can be lifelong friends in the field with, then that's the way to get started.
Yeah, and exactly. Kate, do you have any events that are upcoming?
I do. We have our skeet shooters coming up on September 24th. That same weekend, I've got a foraging workshop in Strathgartney in Central PEI. Our mentored hunts will start in October, and probably the last weekend in October, we'll have firearm safety course coming up. So awesome. We're gearing up for the fall for sure.
Kate, if you could get a deal on with WestJet, I'm sure a bunch of us would be out there in a heartbeat.
Listen, I will work on that. That would be fun.
Awesome. And before we forget, Kate, how can people reach you?
Yeah, you can reach me via Facebook, either my Facebook page or Women Shooters of PEI, or of course you can always email us, womenshootersofpei@gmail.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I think we've covered everything, so am I good to go ahead and go with the outro now?
How about we thank some of those sponsors all over again, Rahina?
Yeah.
That sounds great for me. Okay, so yeah, let's go ahead and thank our sponsors again. So Cabela's Canada Outdoor Fun, Savage Arms, Beretta, and Vortex. And if you like today's episode, please leave us a like and follow us so that you don't miss out on any of our episodes. You can watch us on YouTube and Facebook, or you can listen to us through Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. If you liked our message and would like to learn more about our programs, check out our websites at cusf.ca, ladyguns.ca, and mapleseedrifleman.com. To support us and get some more additional perks, check out our membership programs. Thank you all for tuning into the She Shoots podcast, episode 9, Lady Conservationist, Women Protecting Our Ecosystem. Don't miss out on our next episode, Shotgun Sports Up in Smoke. Our guest will be Terry Houston. Terry competes in sporting clays and 5-stand with a little skeet. She is a level 1 NSCA instructor, creator of fundamentals and guns, wild roses shooting courses at the Vancouver Gun Club. Make sure to save the date for October 11, 2022. Thank you and good night.
Night.